Hello, and welcome to another edition of Ask the Professor, a crowd-driven, crowd-supported feature where we rely on your questions and your contributions to talk about economics, political philosophy, history, culture, all those things that concern us in our common life as citizens.
All right, and here's one from Robbie, who's one of your teenage viewers, and he's asking, especially in light of the events in Charlottesville, is it okay to punch a Nazi?
No, not unless they initiated the violence. And by that, I don't mean rhetorical violence. I don't mean the postmodern notion that, say, homophobia is violence. I mean, if they are hitting people, shooting people, breaking heads. And before I explain why, I should start by saying I think the reason that a lot of people have this question is they're afraid that if neo-Nazis are allowed to speak and propagate their hateful doctrines, they'll convince people, that they'll create a huge movement. Next thing you know, we'll have concentration camps and aggressive wars. So let me say here that, like John Stuart Mill, I take my stand firmly on what's called the Dracula effect, that sunlight destroys evil. I am not slightly afraid that if neo-Nazi doctrines are debated fairly and with intelligence, they will prevail. They are not merely evil, they're also stupid, and they will fall apart if examined fairly. And you need to believe that, because if you don't, if you say, oh no, we can't allow dangerous ideas out there because people will follow them, then you don't believe in self-government. And at that point, you're in danger of turning into people very like the ones you despise. I mean, not on the details of doctrine. It's not like if you punch out a neo-Nazi and take his Hitler poster, you're going to go put it up in your bedroom. But you too will not trust the ordinary people, will think that they should be told what to do. The Leninist concept of the Communist Party is the vanguard of the working class that must make sure that the proletariat does not what it actually wants, but what it should want. And also because when you give in to this impulse to initiate violence, you let the darkness well up inside you that you despise in them.
Not to make light of all this, but it's like Luke Skywalker and his father. If you start hating, you're joining the Force.
Yeah, I mean, you might consider
There's
Star Wars
that
a bit
scene,
kitschy,
right?
but that's a profound moral message. And the Emperor tells him, give in to your anger, Luke. And he must not do so. And that really is true of all of us. And you know, there was recently there was some sort of rally concerned with immigration in Quebec City at which the left-wing counter-protesters showed up and they assaulted the police. And the mayor told the initial protesters, you're not welcome in Quebec City. But if the authorities censor it, using the police power of the state, what it does, it drives it underground where hate can fester in the darkness and the damp. We want it exposed to light and fresh air. And we want these things in our own souls. Because when you see a neo-Nazi rally, I mean, my advice, frankly, is ignore it. Don't give the fire any oxygen. You know, it's not like they're drawing crowds of 20,000 people. There's a couple of dozen pitiful losers out there. And here I'm also reminded of a moving passage from Whittaker Chambers' autobiography, Witness, where he talks about the fact that even after he'd broken with the American Communist Party, in its Stalinist heyday, when it really was trying to subvert the government and destroy the liberties of the American people, that is not a McCarthyite fantasy. It really was happening. And Chambers writes that even after he broke with the party, he was very reluctant to name people who'd actually engaged in espionage, who could face charges of treason and long prison terms, because he said, I wandered so long in the darkness myself that I would not do anything that might stop somebody else from finding the way back to the light. And if you find yourself wanting to see these people, these lost sheep, not brought back to the fold, but driven out to die contemptibly in the desert, then you're getting into the darkness yourself. Now, it is important that if the Nazis start breaking the law, if they start using violence, they must be prevented from doing it. The authorities are meant to stop them if they're the ones throwing rocks and bottles. And if you were to find yourself in, say, the Third Reich, where the law was made by the Nazis and said, yes, it's okay to kill Jews, that violates a higher law that we are all bound to obey, that thou shalt not do murder, that sort of thing. And then you're entitled, I believe, absolutely, to use force to resist a Nazi government. That is not initiating violence. That is taking up arms. That's not just a right, it's a duty when illegitimate violence is being perpetrated by somebody else. But so long as the Nazis are merely speaking, they have a right to do so, not just in a kind of what can you do way, but as part of a profound conviction that truth will prevail, that truth will make you free, and freedom will find out the truth. And that what we need to do with evil doctrines, we need to hate the sin, but love the sinner, and we need to show that these ideas are wrong, without fear that they will convince huge numbers of people if we don't immediately start breaking heads. A confidence instead that truth will win over even the people who have wandered into the darkness and will certainly keep the darkness from spreading. So by all means, stand up to hateful doctrines, but don't do it with hatred in your own heart. Don't break the law, and have faith that the truth will prevail.
I forget who it was who said that it's amazing how some ideas just stink after just 2 days in the sun. Remember that when you have discussions over these matters.
And be thankful that that is how the world is constituted.
The sun is on your side. You're good. All right, thanks for that, folks. If you would like to play along and ask your question of the professor, go to the URL on your screen and everything there will be explained. Thanks, and see you next time.